I feel like this is controversial because I have been getting absolutely obliterated on YouTube comments from CM Punk fans. So I feel like I shouldn't be touching CM Punk stuff, but here I am. So Seth Rollins did an interview with Chris Van Vliet this week, and of course, people are taking tidbits from that interview and running with it, even some without context or not the full quote, whatever. And one of the things that I've seen on a lot of the aggregator accounts on Twitter is talking about why he feels that Punk was really selfish when he left in 2014. And people are misreading the quote, or they're picking and choosing what they're reading and how they're interpreting what he said. And I don't think what he said was wrong. So the main gist of it is that uh he left when he was on top, and he was fortunate because he had the luxury of being able to kind of just leave, and there was no real alternative at the time. I mean, you could say TNA, but obviously
No, yeah, that
based
was the
on
only one.
Seth's interpretation, that was not real competition or an alternative at the time. But because of the amount of money that Punk had made, obviously he was able to leave and not have to worry about not being able to feed himself and his family. And so he talks about in the interview as well that he had reached out a couple times to Punk throughout the years, never heard back. And he thinks that the selfish part is not that he left necessarily, it's that he left and expected all of his friends to do the same, like in solidarity with him. And people are not understanding that part, and why Seth is 100% right. That is selfish, because he talks about, you know, I wasn't a CM Punk in 2014. Like even Seth
No.
Rollins was still on the come up in 2014.
hmm
Um it could be that he was still in the Shield at that point, depending on what point in the year we're talking
No,
about.
they were no. Seth was the Shield was very much a team when
Okay,
CM
yeah.
Punk left. Yeah.
So he wasn't making Seth Rollins money now. He certainly was not making CM Punk money at that point. And so the idea that Punk thought it was a good idea to try and like get his friends to leave with him, that is selfish, because he understood that they weren't in the same position as him, and then some kind of deciding in that moment, because they didn't follow him, even if they did privately show support for him, which we don't know, but I assume they did, maybe they didn't. That was when he went on the 10-year bashing spree, trying to take the company down, blah 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 blah. And I don't think anything is wrong with what Seth said. People are thinking that he sounds so bitter, he sounds like a crybaby, he sounds like this and that, because they're trying to twist it into Seth saying something that he didn't. He's not saying that, Punk wasn't justified in why he left. If we're talking about Punk left because of the staph infection and this and this and that, he doesn't even talk about that. you
He
know
doesn't talk about any of that. The whole
yeah.
point of what he's talking about is basically to give substance to why he and Punk are feuding, because it has not been explained on WWE programming, at least on live programming, and this is why going on interviews like CVV,
hmm
Busted Open, you could kind of say Fightful, but that's more newsy.
yeah.
I don't know. That's more wrestling newsy, but more Busted Open and CVV, because those types of interviews give you the chance to, you know, go into a little kayfabe with some reality. You can explain things that the wrestling fan who just joined or whatnot didn't know before, and it's like, oh, okay, I know they hate each other, but why? All right, well, it's because, yeah, they actually were a mentor, he did this. The other aspect to this whole story about CM Punk and connecting it was that Rollins was obviously, Punk's mentor, or no, mentee,
hmm
but the Shield was supposed to be Punk's bodyguards. The whole vision for the Shield was to be the bodyguards for Punk, so that he could beat guys like Ryback. And I think it was even teased that it was supposed to last until the Undertaker feud, at Mania. So like, and then it went into the other direction because Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, John Moxley had star power, and Roman Reigns had the look of star power, just needed to learn.
Thank you.
There's just a lot of that there's a lot of that to unpack that you do not have the time to do on a 3-hour Raw or even 4-hour Raw for Netflix. Like, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. There's just not enough time, and interviews like this make it possible. And it's not Seth being a crybaby or whiner. It's just him telling his side of the story.